हेलो दोस्तों, दिस इज भारत कुमार एंड यू आर वाचिंग माय चैनल निर्मल इन्फो अपडेट्स।
Hold me close till I get up. Time is barely on our side. I don't wanna waste what's left.
Satellite image taken in May of a Chinese army base in Galwan Valley, where Chinese and Indian soldiers clashed last month. Max or Worldview -3 satellites /Reuters. Over the course of the novel coronavirus crisis, analysts have watched relations between the United States and China spiral to a historic nadir, with scant hope of recovery. There are many reasons for this light, but Beijing, in a striking departure from its own diplomatic track record, has been taking a much harder line than usual on the international stage, so much so that even the most seasoned observers are wondering whether China's foreign policy has fundamentally changed. China's approach to the world was, of course, never ironclad. Many factors determine a country's diplomatic strategy, from its history, culture, and geography to the nature of its regime and its relative global power. If a government perceives one or more of these factors to have changed, so, too, may its diplomacy. But as COVID-19 has ravaged the globe, Chinese President Xi Jinping has appeared to defy many of his country's long-held foreign policy principles all at once. It is too early to tell with certainty, but China, imbued with crisis-stoked nationalism, confident in its continued rise, and willing to court far more risk than in the past, may well be in the middle of a foreign policy rethink that will reverberate around the world. The Chinese Communist Party, CCP, started 2020 on the back foot, but it didn't stay there for long. Accused of being insufficiently transparent about the origins of the coronavirus pandemic, Beijing rushed to defend its global image. And once it had brought the outbreak within its borders under control, it embarked on a brash campaign of mass diplomacy, casting itself as a new global health leader. But Beijing did not stop there. In the months since the pandemic first engulfed the world, China's government has engaged in an unprecedented diplomatic offensive on virtually every foreign policy front. It has tightened its grip over Hong Kong, ratcheted up tensions in the South China Sea, unleashed a diplomatic pressure campaign against Australia, used fatal force in a border dispute with India, and grown more vocal in its criticism of Western liberal democracies. In the past, the CCP generally sought to maintain a relatively stable security environment, occasionally seizing opportunities to advance the country's aims without provoking undue international backlash and carefully recalibrating whenever it overreached. Beijing's recent actions, however, reveal no such conservatism or caution. China may simply be taking advantage of the chaos of the pandemic and the global power vacuum left by a no-show U.S. administration. But there is reason to believe that a deeper and more lasting shift is underway. The world may be getting a first sense of what a truly assertive Chinese foreign policy looks like. In the months since 20 Indian Army personnel were killed as a result of the clash of Galwan on the Sino-Indian border, public anger at China is palpable. There have been growing calls for a strong response from the Indian government, including a strengthened partnership with Taiwan. There have also been similar calls for enhanced support for Tibet and the Dalai Lama. About 10 days after the Galwan clash, Pema Khandu, Chief Minister of Arunachal Pradesh, referred to the line of actual control dividing India and China as the India-Tibet border. Several points are noteworthy here. He was speaking at an Indian Army meeting at the Bumla border post. He is from the BJP, the party that also holds power in New Delhi, and his state is entirely claimed by China, which calls it Southern Tibet. Coming against the backdrop of the Galwan clash, this could appear to be an attempt at rekindling the Tibet issue, which India has done every now and then when there is a conflict with China. This was of course music to the ears of Tibet activists, who have been seeking active Indian support for a long time. Tenzin Sudhu, a Tibetan writer and activist, during a recent media interview, echoed Khandu and said that the border must be called the Tibet border and not the China border. Not surprisingly, Chinese media has commented on such Indian views and opposed them. Coming against the backdrop of the Galwan clash, this could appear to be an attempt at rekindling the Tibet issue, which India has done every now and then when there is a conflict with China. This was, of course, music to the ears of Tibet activists, who have been seeking active Indian support for a long time. There is ongoing debate about how India should respond to the Tibet question in the light of China's increased pressure. Some Indian public commentators support playing the Tibet card while others are somewhat cautious. Well before the current conflict, in 2018, the Rashtriya Swayamsevak Sangh, RSS, the Hindu nationalist organization out of which the BJP emerged, had argued for a reappraisal of India's Tibet policy. Prominent BJP ideologues have supported reopening the Tibet issue, even supporting the right of Tibetans to live as a free nation. Such voices have become louder. A retired senior army officer wrote about the strategic importance of Tibet and argued the time has come to challenge the very legitimacy of the Chinese claim over Tibet. In another opinion piece in Business World, Krisham Varma, a former head of India's Foreign Secret Service, made a case for a fresh assessment of India's Tibet policy. He argued that a new Indian policy approach on Tibet has the real potential of causing major turbulence in China's underbelly. He added that India might do well to align its policy on the issue with the US and support the Tibet Policy and Support Act, 2019 that has been passed by the US Congress and is pending US Senate approval before being promulgated into law through due process. He said the two nations have signed a Memorandum of Understanding, MOU, to begin cooperation on strategic petroleum reserves. We are also in an advanced stage of discussions for storing crude oil. U.S. strategic petroleum reserves to increase India's strategic oil stockpile, he told reporters after co-chairing the second India-U.S. Strategic Energy Partnership Ministerial with U.S. Secretary of Energy Dan Willett. The U.S. has 714 million barrels of oil storage capacity in its Strategic Petroleum Reserve, SPR, the world's largest supply of emergency crude oil. In comparison, India stores 5.33 million tons, about 38 million barrels, of crude oil in underground storages at 3 locations on the east and west coast, hardly enough to meet its 9.5 days needs. International Energy Agency, IEA, prescribes its members to have at least 90 days of stock in the strategic reserves. India has been looking to expand the storage capacity and is also exploring the possibility of hiring storage in the U.S. to stock some oil that can be used in times of extreme price volatility or supply disruption. We are beginning to collaborate on strategic petroleum reserves as well, and that is an important element of energy security, Willett said. We are collaborating on renewable energy, nuclear energy, energy efficiency in buildings, appliances, and industrial sector. Stating that the two nations are also looking at cooperation in hydrogen, he said, it is a partnership between two great nations. When it comes to relations between the United States and India, economically and energy-wise, best is yet to come. He said U.S. oil supplies to India have jumped tenfold to 250,000 barrels per day, BPD, between 2017 and 2019. Between 2017 and last year, U.S. crude oil exports to India rose by nearly 10-fold to almost 250,000 barrels per day. Between March 2016 and May of this year, 68 LNG shipments of over 234 billion cubic feet were exported to India. India is now the single largest importer of U.S. oil in the world, he said.
Yeah.